All right, so today we're diving into a career path. I don't know much about, honestly, a youth offending team worker.
Yeah.
You sent over some super interesting materials on this from RoleCatcher about like the day-to-day, what these folks actually do, the skills you need to make it in that kind of role, and even where it could lead long term.
Yeah, it's definitely a side of youth crime we don't often get to see, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we see the headlines about incidents, but we never really think about the people working directly with these young people trying to, like, actually make a difference.
exactly. And the stuff you send over really paints a picture that's way more complex than I think most people realize.
So first things first, when we say youth offending team worker, what are we actually talking about? What do they do? It's more than just a job title, I'll say that. We're not talking about just like a quick sit-down chat, though counseling is a part of it.
Right.
It's really about taking a holistic approach to each young person's situation. So thinking about housing education, even assessing risks to try and prevent future offenses.
Man, that sounds like that's a lot.
It is.
That's got to be demanding.
Yeah.
The role catcher materials mentioned, visiting young offenders in secure institutions,
Mhm.
that alone feels like a whole other level of commitment
Oh, for sure.
and honestly bravery.
Yeah, and that really highlights just what a unique skill set you need to be successful in this role, right? You need a very high level of social perceptiveness, being able to understand what a young person is communicating even when they're not saying it directly.
Yeah, it's like reading between the lines, but with real life consequences. The phrase active listening comes to mind,
Absolutely.
which I feel like is particularly important in this line of work. You
Yeah.
can't just be going through the motions.
You've got to be present. You've got to be
Right.
building that trust and rapport,
Yeah.
especially with young people who might be wary of authority figures, right?
Yeah.
It's about really understanding their background, their experiences, and meeting them where they are.
Yeah. Which brings us to something that I think is a particularly challenging aspect of this kind of work, the emotional toll.
Yeah.
How do these professionals handle the stress and avoid burning out when they're dealing with such complex and often difficult situations?
That's such a crucial aspect of this work, and it's something that, we should definitely delve into further, but self-care is absolutely essential, as is having a really strong support system, both inside and outside of work.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've established this is a demanding role requiring a pretty unique set of skills, a certain level of emotional resilience. But what about the career path itself?
Mm.
Is becoming a youth offending team worker a stepping stone to something else, or is it more of a lifelong calling?
Honestly, it can be both. The materials you shared really highlighted three distinct stages in this career. You've got your entry level, your junior, and your senior roles. So for entry level, you're assisting more senior team members, learning the ropes, observing interactions, that sort of thing.
It's a lot of hands-on learning, just building those foundational skills.
Exactly.
What happens as you progress into those junior and senior roles?
That's where things get really interesting. As you gain experience and move up the ranks, the responsibilities shift dramatically. Imagine leading a team of these professionals, developing and implementing strategies to address youth crime at a more systemic level.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It
It sounds
is.
like there's real potential for leadership there
Absolutely.
and making, a tangible impact on the lives of young people and the community as a whole.
Exactly. And for those who are particularly ambitious, a career as a youth offending team worker can serve as a really strong springboard into various leadership positions within the entire criminal justice system.
It's fascinating to think about the different avenues that this one career path could open up. And speaking of navigating those avenues, you mentioned RoleCatcher earlier. I have to admit, I'm curious about how this platform supports individuals interested in this line of work.
Honestly, I was really impressed with how much they offer, especially for someone, serious about breaking into this field. I even wrote it down here. It's like a Swiss Army knife for job seekers.
Okay, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife for job seekers. You've got my attention. What makes you say that?
Well, they have a whole system for tailoring your CV, which obviously in such a competitive job market is huge. Plus, tons of resources for practicing interview questions, which I think can make a big difference, especially for a role like this, where, like you said, that human connection is so vital during that interview process.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
There's one thing to have the qualifications on paper, but being able to articulate, your passion and your understanding of this really unique field during an interview is key. What stood out to you about their interview resources?
They actually offer AI-powered practice, which I thought was really fascinating. So you can record yourself answering common interview questions and get feedback on things like your tone, your body language, even like how well your answers align with what the job is actually asking for.
Yeah.
It's like having a personal coach in your pocket.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
I can see how having that kind of feedback would be a game changer in terms of just feeling prepared and confident going into an interview.
Hmm.
But even with the best tools and preparation, it really comes down to having the right skills and temperament to thrive in a role like this, right? We've talked about social perceptiveness, active listening. What other qualities are essential for a youth offending team worker?
Critical thinking is huge. You're constantly assessing situations, making judgment calls, often under pressure. And you have to be able to communicate those judgments effectively, both verbally when you're working directly with young people and their families, and in writing when you're, preparing reports or collaborating with other professionals.
Right, so it's not just about understanding the young person right in front of you. You have to navigate this whole other complex system.
Yeah.
Persuasion must also play a part in this, right? It's not about just telling these young people what to do. It's about guiding them towards positive choices.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly challenging, especially when you're working with young people who might be resistant to authority or skeptical of the system's intentions. It requires this delicate balance of empathy, firmness, and a genuine belief in their potential for change. Which brings us back to the emotional toll of this work, something we touched on earlier. How do youth offending team workers stay resilient and avoid burnout when faced with these really complex and often heartbreaking situations?
It's a question that's been on my mind this whole time. You're dealing with young people who are often facing incredibly difficult circumstances, making mistakes that have serious consequences. How do you separate yourself from that emotionally while still showing up authentically and effectively for the young people that you're working with?
It's a constant balancing act. Self-care
Yeah.
is absolutely essential. And I'm not just talking about like bubble baths and meditation apps, although those can help. It's about setting boundaries, recognizing when you need to step back and recharge, and really leaning on your support system for guidance and encouragement.
It's about knowing you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
You have to prioritize your own well-being in order to be fully present for the young people who rely on you.
Yeah.
What role does the work environment play in supporting these individuals?
The work environment is crucial. Having a strong supervisor who really understands the demands of the job and provides regular supervision and support is paramount. It's also about having colleagues who get it, people you can vent to, people who can share their own experiences and even inject some much-needed humor into really challenging situations.
Yeah, that camaraderie, that shared understanding, I imagine, makes a world of difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Just knowing you're not alone in the trenches, so to speak.
Absolutely. And ultimately, I think it's that shared passion for the work, that belief in the power of change and the knowledge that you're making a real difference in the lives of these young people that fuels the resilience needed to thrive in this incredibly demanding yet ultimately rewarding field.
It's about seeing the potential in every young person, even when they might not see it themselves. And that brings us to another aspect highlighted in these materials, which is the increasing role of technology, specifically AI, in the criminal justice system. And while we won't get into any potentially controversial topics, it's worth acknowledging the evolving landscape of this field and how that might impact the work of a youth offending team worker.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating and rapidly changing landscape. And as technology continues to play a larger role in various aspects of the criminal justice system, it's essential for professionals in this field to stay informed and adapt their approaches accordingly.
It really does feel like we're on the verge of like a whole new world of challenges and possibilities. But
Yeah.
no matter how advanced the technology gets,
Yeah.
we keep coming back to that human element you were talking about.
Yeah.
That ability to connect with someone, to see beyond just like the offense and really see the individual, the potential in each young person.
At the heart of the work, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for our listener out there who is maybe, interested in this line of work, what advice would you give them? What are some key takeaways that they should keep in mind if they want to explore this career path?
I would say, first and foremost, embrace the complexity. This isn't a 9 to 5 job that you can just, clock out of and leave at the office. It requires real dedication, empathy, a willingness to like constantly learn and adapt.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart,
No,
but it does sound incredibly rewarding for the right person.
absolutely.
Someone who really has that passion for making a difference.
And remember, you're not just working with these young people, you're also navigating a very complex system.
Yeah.
So be prepared to advocate for your clients, to challenge the status quo, and to always be a voice for positive change.
So it's about being more than just a worker.
Absolutely.
You're an advocate, a mentor, a source of support. And sometimes it sounds like even a bit of a detective trying to uncover, those root causes, the underlying issues that might be contributing to this behavior in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about really digging deep and understanding those individual circumstances, the social and environmental factors, those systemic barriers that might be at play.
And recognizing that every single young person is different with their own story, their own challenges, their own potential.
Exactly. And that's what makes the work so challenging, so demanding, but ultimately so rewarding. It's about really believing in that possibility of change and the resilience of the human spirit and having the courage to walk alongside these young people as they navigate, some of life's toughest challenges.
Wow, that's powerful. To see that spark, even when it's buried under layers of hurt or anger or mistrust. And I think that's really what we were hoping to get at with this whole deep dive. Not just the, day-to-day mechanics of the job, but the heart of it,
Yeah.
what it means to do this kind of work.
Yeah, and hopefully gain a new appreciation for the people who dedicate their lives to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, me too.
For our listener out there, I hope that this has at least sparked your curiosity to learn more and maybe explore, the resources available like RoleCatcher, and seriously consider if this is the right path for you. And hey, who knows? Maybe someday we'll be talking about your journey as a youth offending team worker, making a difference.
That would be amazing.
It would be. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep exploring those less traveled paths, and keep diving deep.